I want to begin with the lecture today, which I haven't done a lot, even with you guys, is talk about really the link between karate and Shaolin Kung Fu, and ultimately the foundation of how a Buddhist temple created such a warrior class of warriors over the centuries. So you have to kind of understand the basic tenets of Buddhism. You know, what is it? You know, is it a religion? Is it a philosophy? Is it a way of life, and so forth? And how it ties back to our Shaolin Wen Chun. The origin of Saam Mou Kiu too. And then from Saam Mou Kiu tie back to the martial art aspect of it, which is you guys disciples at the discipleship level, you have to know all this stuff.
Sure.
Because you're a high level karate guy, you have to, this will help you to really submit your status to, you know, at the end of the day, karate is the mother arts of karate is Shaolin Kung Fu. But also you qualify, that person asks, what's the difference between praying and worshiping?
Well, praying would be almost like a conversation. You know, like you're talking to God or whoever it is you're praying to. Worshiping would be like a series of acts or practices that dictate a form of worship. So it would be two different things. Now, through the years, sometimes these things have gotten intertwined, and certain prayers might be considered part of worship.
So, for example, if I talk to my past father,
Right.
my father, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that considered praying?
It could be, but it would actually be more like a conversation to a deity or somebody like you would.
So praying has to be with a deity?
It doesn't have to be, but generally is. Generally is. But there's different kinds of prayer. I mean, religion is so, it's almost like martial arts. Okay, I say that because everybody has a different view and a different perspective and a different take.
Right.
So what one person says is a prayer, another person might say that's not a prayer, that's a form of worship, or that's just, you're just reciting something that somebody else wrote, and that's not meaningful because it doesn't come from your heart. Another person might say, well, it is meaningful because I do mean it even though somebody else wrote it. So, I mean, it's all perspective.
Because in Buddhism, you're not supposed to worship because Buddha is not a deity.
Right.
He's a human being. But yet, throughout the century, the custom, the practice seems like, or even the common people, you know how people are, they like to worship.
Right.
You know, things they're not even supposed to worship. So, but what the Buddhists do, they do pray, I think. Just the fact they communicate.
They definitely meditate, right?
Oh yeah, meditation is a big part.
Right.
Right.
Wasn't Buddha originally a Hindu monk?
No.
No, okay.
Yeah. He's a Indian prince.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an Indian prince that was sheltered, you know, with a great life until he went outside the palace where he first experienced sickness. He had never seen any sickness before.
Okay.
And then age, he was all sheltered and surrounded himself with, I guess not him, but you know, as a youngster, he never seen anyone that is like super old. And then finally, he never seen anything or anybody die before. So outside the temple, he's seen sickness, imperfection, suffering, and ultimately death. And that kind of started his journey from a prince to a wandering person seeking for the truth. Okay, we're going to start with the lecture first. Our Shaolin Wing Chun tradition always have two elements. It's symbolized by the tiger and dragons. Okay, that means to reach to a certain level, okay, as a master level or someone who is highly expertise, or ultimately to the origin of the art, which talk about being enlightened from the Shaolin Temple, you have to come from two tracks. That is from actual experience and actual understanding. So if you say I'm an expert or I'm enlightened, but just by understanding it, which is the dragon, that's also illusion. Okay? Or someone would have a sudden insight or sudden awakening or sudden paradigm shift, okay, through experience, but then they can't explain it. Okay, so sometimes the wisdom and knowledge gained is through experience, actually doing it, and sometimes it's through the study, the wisdom, the understanding. But the reality is that you gotta have both, which created our tiger and dragon. This is where the roots of our tiger and dragon come from. Okay, to put it into simple terms, when it comes to human identity, we are those two elements as well. At this moment, if I ask one of you, so who are you? Do you know? Well, you can tell me the superficial level. Okay, I'm a male. I'm a certain age. I'm a certain race. I'm certain this and that. Okay, personalities. Okay, so at a deeper level, who you are at this moment, because you're not the same 20 years ago or 10 years ago, not even maybe 5 weeks ago. So who are you at this moment is your beliefs. Your beliefs, we say belief, is down at the subconscious level, which is the subconscious mind that is currently ruling or governing how you think. But that subconscious mind's origin is information that you put in there consciously or subconsciously. But it internalized to become a belief. Okay? So if you fight somebody's belief system, you're not gonna win because they take it personally, because that's their identity. Okay? Then the second half of that identity is your habits. And habit is not coming from reading a book. Habit comes from doing things. So at this moment, we are all creatures of habits and beliefs. So that's the other way of looking at what is tiger and dragon. Okay? And as a Kung Fu family, we're here as a gathered together as a martial artist. So for habit, you want to train the right muscle memory. So in this case, our habit is not towards a certain skill sets of combat, specializing in certain tool sets. Tools like kicking is a tool, striking is a tool, grappling is a tool, playing the bow staff is a tool. So we don't specialize in any weapons or particular skill set. We learn all of it, but our focus on muscle memory is get them to the point of what we call maximum efficiency. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
There are martial arts that specialize in techniques. Taekwondo, kickboxing, punch, jiu-jitsu, grab, right? That's they're called specialists. Okay? We are generalists, but working towards maximum efficiency. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes,
Okay? So our muscle memory is to train that maximum efficiency. Okay? But maximum efficiency is a level of skill, not a certain style. Okay? So, and concept of maximum efficiency, you have to understand. Okay? Then we have all the wisdoms, the 6 wisdoms, the principle, the concept, the mechanics, all teach you that. So ultimately, that's really what consists of tiger and dragons. Okay? So Shaolin Kung Fu originally come from the Shaolin Temple. The name temple itself tells you it's not a martial arts school. It's a temple. And what kind of temple is it?
Buddhist temples.
It's Buddhism. But what kind of Buddhism?
Chan.
Right. Okay. Chan or Zen in Japanese. So when Buddhism was created in India, then it exported, okay, to many places. So then it went to China, okay. And the early form of Buddhism is known as small vehicle. So they're really strict. You have to kind of leave the world and go to the mountain and temples to really be able to get to a point where you need to be as a Buddhist. Right, so that means the vehicle is very narrow, very small. It's not for everybody, right? If I say you guys gotta get your discipleship, you gotta be a monk, and nobody's gonna be a disciple at this moment, right? You can't afford to just leave, okay? Leave the world. So, so the mainstream Buddhism was esoteric and it's not for everybody. Until there's an Indian monk that went to China and make the long story short, he settled into a new temple by the mountain called Shaolin, okay, means young forest. And he meditated, and through his own cultivation, he created what we call Chan or Zen, okay? And that today is known as a big vehicle, because it changes from a very narrow path into a path where it's much more flexible, where common people can practice Buddhism without have to leave the world, so to speak. Okay? So what Shaolin Temple created, and it is the origin of Zen or Chan Buddhism. Okay?
Yes.
It is not the origin. If you read a lot of historians or people that writes an article on martial art, is Shaolin Temple created Kung Fu, which created martial art. Okay, Chan Buddhism was created in 600 AD. China's been around like recorded histories had another 3,000 years before that. So that means they had their martial art for thousands of years before this Indian monk came to China. Okay, so Kung Fu did not start from the Shaolin Temple, but Chan Buddhism did. Does that make sense? Okay? So the first thing is, then after the Shaolin Temple was created, and they're primarily a Chan temple, then how did the martial art become such an important part of Shaolin Temple, become the brand name, become the key identity? There are tens of thousands of Buddhist temples. Why Shaolin Temple is the only temple that practice, that train and teach martial art? So this is something in our system, as a master level student, as a disciple, this is something obviously you have to know. But you don't become, today's ranking is so superficial, so watered down, where you test for high rank just because you go through some physical techniques, without deep understandings. Okay, so many systems came out of Shaolin Temple. Eventually, it traveled outside of China. One of the first places it went is Okinawan Islands, and from there it traveled into mainland Japan. And today, that particular branch of martial art is known as karate. Okay, so Steve is going to be going through a discipleship in our Shaolin Wenchin system, but himself already is a high level karate master level, 7th degree. Okay, so with karate background, okay, learning the Shaolin Kung Fu, like art Kung Fu, is basically just going deeper into the roots of karate, which is very appropriate since you're already a high level karate master. And you just gotten promoted not too long ago, right?
What, 6 years, 5 years?
He's almost
5 or
ready
6
for his
years.
8th degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, then, at a certain level, obviously, you have to go beyond the physical stuff, okay? So, who can tell me the actual character karate means? The Chinese is 3 characters: Kong, So, Dao.
The empty fist or open hand?
Okay, anybody?
I think it originally was supposed to be China hand, and then after that it got translated to or redirected to empty hand. But originally I think it was supposed to be from China hand. It was the original Okinawan, and then like I said, when it went to Japanese, it got
Okay,
changed.
Yeah, there are many of the art that got exported during certain dynasty time, and one of those dynasties is called the Tang Dynasty, which is a very highly developed culture during that era. Okay, actually, if you look at the Asian architectures, you go to Korea, Japan, China, there's similarities, right? Actually, it's due to the roots of the Tang Dynasty, most of those design and culture during that time. So a lot of those martial arts that were exported eventually settled in the foreign land. Originally, they gave the name of Tang Sudo or Tang Sodao, the hand of the tongue, which points back to the Chinese origin. When the Shaolin Temple came around, okay, it infused a deeper philosophy into it. So the Japanese, eventually in the mainland, okay, in Okinawa it wasn't called karate. Okay, it's actually called, in our black flags called kun tao. Okay, in Western world it's called kinpo. Simply means the fist method. Well, it wasn't a fancy name, but it's a general term to represent all the empty-handed methods. Right? Later, when it went to Japan, it became Kongso Dao, or the empty hand. The way of the empty hand. That's what Kongso Dao karate means. The way of empty hands. Okay. So where the empty hand name comes from, it goes back to deeper roots of Shaolin. Okay. Now, when you first hear you doing a martial art and you say empty hand, you think, oh, okay, because we're not carrying weapons, so therefore it's empty hand. No, the emptiness, the empty hand comes from the emptiness of the Chan Buddhism. Okay? Any questions so far? And we got it? Okay, the general background.
Sir, may I ask?
I haven't explained the actual Buddhism yet. Yes.
Yes, sir. The original monk from India, was it the Bodhidharma? Is that the name of the monk that created China?
From India to Shaolin is Buddha, Buddha Dharma.
Bodhidharma. Okay. Yes, sir.
Himself is not a martial artist.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So when Chan Buddhism was created, but it's still a form of Buddhism, okay? And Buddhism, very simple. If I have to explain it in a short period of time, okay, first generally they call it the Four Noble Truths. Okay? Number one, Buddha is himself a person. And Buddha Dharma himself is a person. So they are not deities. You should not worship a human being. So therefore, in that context, it is not a religion. But people do pray, they do things that kind of turns into a religion. So if somebody say, okay, my religion is Buddhism, they're really misrepresentation. Okay? Buddhism is more of a methods of reality or methods of investigation or methods to obtain enlightenment as a way of life, as a philosophy, but it's not a religion where you worship. Does that make sense? So you could have your personal faith, but still be a Buddhist as well. Because number one, Four Noble Truths. First truth is, see if everyone agree. Okay, the Buddhist point of view is that in this life, we're here, life is a struggle, constant suffering. Is that true or not?
True.
True. Right? from the day you're born to the day you die, you are constantly facing certain struggles and challenges. Right? It's based on perspective. Okay? Even, okay, for example, you tell me what is this, okay? Something very, very painful, very bloody. Okay? And
Birth.
yeah, birth itself is a struggle. Okay, if you hear the detail of what the lady's going through, it sounds very violent. Right, but yet it's birth. From growing up, okay, to every stage of life, okay, it's challenge. Right? Even though your perspective, let's say I want to become a world champion, let's say Vincent, right? That's a noble path, right? But the struggle he takes on is challenging, right? So there will be, quote, we call suffering. So number one, you have to realize that is the condition. Okay? Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what causes that suffering to suffer more is what we call our craving. Okay? Which is part of the reality of our life anyway. Okay? Let's say when I was a kid, I wanted to be this. Then you struggle and you achieve that. Then as an adult, then you struggle and achieve. So every phase of life, you go through certain, we call challenges, right? Because you wanted that, because that's what you're striving for. So as long as we live in this world, there will be the next challenge, or we call craving or wants and needs. I want a new car. I want a new wardrobe, whatever, right? Okay, you have that what we call wants and needs. But when that wants and needs become an attachment, okay, that means what does an attachment means in this sense is like when circumstances changes and you still have that want that no longer is part of the condition, you're gonna have to suffer more, using the word suffering to get to that point. Right? Let's say I want to become world champion when I'm 50 years old. Okay? If you look at the natural condition, you shouldn't be fighting at 50 years old. Right? You can teach fighting and produce champions of fighters, but at 50, you still want to do full contact. It becomes an attachment because it's no longer part of the condition that is part of the reality now. But if you force yourself into that point, it will create what we call attachment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay? So when Buddhism speaks of attachment, that means something that you kind of went beyond the natural state. Okay? You went extra. Okay, let's say you made $10 million, but you said, no, that's not enough. I want to be a next billionaire. Well, is it necessary? Or if your ego come into issue, yes, then it will justify. But in reality, you don't need $1 billion to survive your life, right? You end up have to give it away anyway. So that means it becomes attachment, something excessive. Okay? So this is the second noble truth. Very simple. First noble truth is life is struggle and challenge. Okay? Second is what causes that extra suffering is our attachment. So very simple. It's not something religious. Okay? It's basically what Buddha himself went through the condition of life, he realized. So the third noble truth is, so how do we go about eliminating or decrease the suffering is by detachment. Okay? So detachment, let me back up a little bit, right? If you really meditate on our life as a whole, we create the patterns to surround us, to create that what we call security. But in essence, there's no such thing. That pattern is created from your ego, your person. You, I'm me, we all have a certain identity, and from that belief and habits, we create those patterns, okay, which we kind of, how we see the world. But in the reality, there is no patterns. Life comes, you gotta take it as it is. But it's like, I gotta be here Wednesday, not Friday, right? And then basically, if I really, I gotta have it my way, our flight was delayed for 2 days, I would be suffering a lot for 2 days, right? Because I'm going through more frustration, more anger, more blame, and all of that. But if I would accept it, I'm here in Alaska in the middle of winter, right after a blizzard. Let's go walk in the street and see what's that feel like. So I have a bragging right. Now I've been to Alaska in the middle of winter, walking in the middle of a blizzard. So your mind adapt and change, rather than staying in a hotel room and curse the airline, right? It's attachment. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when we create that patterns, it corresponds to really our second hall in our training. Second hall is all about patterns, because that is how we grow up to understand the world. But eventually, if you're so attached to the pattern and you go to the real world, there is no patterns, it's formless, you tend to suffer more. The pattern itself is attachment. Does that make sense? So our training, but at the same time, right, we don't look at pattern as wrong, okay? It's just a phase. But if you attach to it, it becomes bad. Easy to understanding is go back to our martial art point of view. When we all started traditional martial art, that means we learn certain patterns: karate, kata, pumse, taekwondo, taolu, kung fu, because it's necessary way to mold the body into certain mechanics to understand the techniques, right? Let's say in our Saam Mou Kiu, the pattern is, you go from this to this to this to this, right? That is the fixed pattern. But in a fight, that's not going to come out. But you expect that to come out. So you're going into the real world that is fluid, that is formless, there's no pattern. Force a pattern onto it, meeting that reality, you're going to suffer. So from attachment, going into reality of to formless, you're going to suffer more. So the elements is to detach. So that means, how do we detach from our forms? You have to experience next level of reality. Then you enter our third hall. The Shaolin Wen Chen third hall is what?
Detachment, sir.
It's sparring, right?
Yes, sir.
It's application. So if you come into our sparring class after a few times, you know, hey, none of those patterns should be, it's not how it's applied. You're not going to find the Silim Tao pattern there, you're not going to find the Saam Mou Kiu pattern there, you're not going to find the Sam Chin Po pattern there. Okay. But by going in there, you might think this is how, so therefore, form champions, if they get to a point, they say, now I can really fight. So they create illusion. Illusion is part of attachments. So then you enter into third hall, or we'll call the third noble truth, which is detachment. Right? Everyone here spar you know. It's about how fluid, how you react to the change moment by moment, the here and now. Right? So as soon as I say here and now, they have passed. So when we meditate, we get to a point of here and now. It's not a static state. It's a state that means you can maintain the change. Here now, here now, here now. This is where the essence of life is. It's a state of change that you can flow and keep up with. As soon as you project yourself into the future or the past, you're no longer here now. That flow stops. And if you prolong that, it becomes attachment. So now you're leaving the reality further back. So you go back to the second noble truth, attachment. Detachment means that you get to a point where you take things as it is. You're highly, your tiger and dragon are highly trained. You simply react to the present moment. Okay? There is a monk's conversation, a senior monk talking to a junior monk. The junior monk trying to impress the senior monk. Oh yeah, I remember this 20 books, word for word, the whole text. Okay? And I meditated for 6 hours without losing track of my meditation. All the skills, he tried to tell the master that, how good I am. And the master said, when I feel hungry, I eat. When I feel tired, I sleep. When I feel thirsty, I drink. And he walks away. Of course, the young monk don't understand. So what is more high level? I'll let you think about that story. Okay? So at the natural state, you simply reflect the reality of the moment. Okay? So detachment is third noble truth. And they go through a form. So basically, at the end of the day, to be enlightened, to be detached, the biggest attachment is not your wants and needs. It is our own ego. When you start to eliminate even your own identity, that means you are fully connected. There is no longer separation. There is no you and me now. Where Bruce Lee has said, I didn't hit you. It hit you. So there is no person behind it. As long as we have this person behind it, you are still attached. That is the biggest attachments. Now this gets into pretty deep thinking now, because most people would like, okay, what do you mean? It's like we always have, I'm you, I'm I, you're you. We always have a certain identity, or that state of separation, you as an individual versus the world. Okay? So at a state where there is no separation, that is point of detachment at the highest level. They call that ultimate connection. Okay? I'm not at that state yet, so I can't tell you. But I understand that at a moment, through martial art, I can experience that detachment. It flows. It's like, wait a minute, I didn't tell my hand to do this, it just did it because of what you doing to me. Okay? Action and reaction, the purity of action, no ego comes out. I didn't want to hurt you more, I didn't want to protect myself. There's no me and me, there's no you and me anymore. It's just simple time-space energy. Okay? So that means that energy interact with the time and space at the right time and moment, at the right time and space. That's the purity of. But to be at that constant level, it's very, very difficult to attain. Right? I can say that I experience moments of reality of the tiger and dragon at the third levels. Okay? Moments of detachment. Okay? and so forth. It doesn't have to be martial art, but fighting become one of the quickest, most clear way to get to this point. So for the Shaolin monk, they understand this, so they experience the reality of life and struggle and fighting is part of it, and they gain a lot of experience from a lot of those warriors that retire, end up in the temple, where they exchange knowledge of life and death versus just a peaceful environment in the temple, where they fuse the two and then ultimately understanding the realities. So fighting become one of their methods to attain enlightenment. Okay. Now, if you talk to anybody that is at the height, people they say they have the moments of enlightenment, painting something, or like climbing the peak of a mountain, or crossing the finish line, racing. So it all come from different moment in time and different activities. So therefore, Chan Buddhism is called the big vehicle, Mahayana. So that means you could have moments of reality through many methods, not just one very narrow method where you have to join the monkhood, have to leave everything behind. So that's Chan Buddhism. Okay? The fourth noble truth is how do you go about getting past these three realities? Life is a struggle. You will struggle more because of attachment. The answer is detach, but then the last step is not, it's more of just, here's on the eighth step to go about helping your life to see reality of the moment. Okay? Well, we're not gonna go through those 8, but first one is most important because it goes back to our system. What's our first form, guys? Yeah, Tao. For Wing Chun. And what does that mean?
Little idea from the beginning.
Little idea from the beginning. Okay? So the first noble path, 8 of them, 8 steps. You must have the right view, right perspective. So in other words, right thinking first. If our information, our view, our thinking, our perspective is wrong in the first place, everything else you do is already going down in the wrong direction already. So the right view, the right thinking is the first key. So the idea is so important, the right ideas. Okay? So because if you look at, because Buddhism view, they believe that ultimately yourself, your ego is illusion. So that means we are not really separated. So the ultimate truth is we are all connected. Right? So everything that you do, Randy, ultimately that ripple effect will affect everything else. Okay, some ripple would go far away where you don't feel it right away, but eventually you come back. So that's why Buddhism talk about karma. Eventually what you do, just like the Bible said that too, what you reap is what you sow. So they call that karma. Okay, so they practice a very compassionate life where you don't generate additional suffering for the world. Okay, because every time you do that, the ripple effect comes back, and when you rebirth, it is based on that karma. If you cause suffering, let's say I kick a puppy dog and let the dog suffer, next life I'm gonna born as a puppy, a little dog. But it's a metaphor for cause and effect. Okay, so this is kind of big. So therefore, Buddhism always focus on a central theme. There are 2: reality-based, compassionate-based. Okay, that's the essence of it. Okay, so it is not a religion. Now, because they really is more of methods to understanding the self. So over a century, they as a temple, the monk have a lot of time environment to really study themselves, so they gain a great understanding about their body, their mind, and their spirits, all of that. So they're highly cultivated in that area. So that created today's what we call the Shaolin Kung Fu. Okay. So if you look at the original Shaolin Wing Chun, it comes from the foundation first hall, which is all about human development. Buddhism, Qigong, diet, compassion, helping each other. So all the character, community type of things that would help each other a community to help each other to bring about that enlightenment. Okay, that's the first hall. So today, the Shaolin Kung Fu first hall, then you see all the different skills. Okay, iron palm, ability to take hits, it's all separate skill to express that human beings are capable of doing much greater than what we think we can. Okay, and today there are 72 skill sets. I think I don't know how many years, but every few years in the Shaolin Temple, they have like a big exhibition on those skill sets. But then you see people do incredible things, breaking iron bars over their head, handstand on one finger, doing crazy things that you think is not possible. Okay, but more importantly, not just the physical feats, but this is area where they talk about compassionate cultivation, all of that. Okay, then the Shaolin warriors enter the second hall. This is where they learn basic exercise, basic movements, patterns, Tao Lu, Jiu Sik Tao Lu, okay? And then the third hall and so forth. Okay, so for almost 1,000 years, this is the essence of Shaolin Kung Fu. Okay, until 1600s, China was again invaded by the external force. The Mongol descendants, the Manchurians, took over China, and they retreated down south, and then the Southern Temple became a rebel base. During time of war, they need to upgrade their fighting system. So the 3 Shaolin halls, okay, at the top is the fighting hall, right? So imagine you have iron palm, iron skill, iron head, okay, one skill, one strike kill. You got weapon training, you got kicking, striking, takedown, submission, range of combat, all of that. You're the top warriors. Where do you go about improving?
Efficiency.
So that little idea was on the right track. Okay? When they created Wing Chun, the little idea from the beginning is about efficiency. It's not about creating more technique or more skill set. It's about taking what you already have, making it more efficient. Right? This is reality, right? During time of war, you have to quickly implement or create something that it doesn't take 10 years to develop. You gotta do with what you have and improve what you already have, right? Make it more efficient. So this is during wartime, they created this little idea, efficiency. And they reached to a point of maximum efficiency. This is called Wing Kiu. Okay? Now Wing Kiu, San Kiu, Fang Kiu. This is also go back to the Four Noble Truths. Fang Kiu is that a person going through their life without seeing the reality or understanding the reality.
Excuse me.
Okay? Someone always going for superficial things. Okay? So they're called a hungry ghost. Okay, what's that mean? Their appetite is so big, but their throat is like this. So they try to take on something they cannot digest, so they suffer. It's called a hungry ghost. You can constantly want more. If I have 10 Ferraris, that's not enough. I want the guy to have 20 Ferraris. That's called a hungry ghost. Okay, that's called Fang Kiu. You're chasing for the wrong thing. Okay? Saam Mou Kiu is where people realizing life is a suffering, it is part of the conditions because our nature of our life creates wants and needs. Right? Every stage, Vincent wanted to become champion. I want my son to be a champion. So every want is part of a condition of life, but that starts a new chain of challenge and suffering. Does that make sense? Okay. So we are at a state where we're consciously aware of, so we can achieve that with less suffering by doing the right thing at the right place at the right time. So Wayne Q on the Buddhist context is where you achieve enlightenment, where the ego is no longer there. Okay. When the ego is there, not there, there's no you and me, there's no, it's just what it is. Right? There's no more status I need to achieve, there's no more, they're at the deeper state of being. That's one Q. Okay? Now, in our Kung Fu system, Saam Mou Kiu, the three connecting bridge, wandering stage, awareness stage, focus stage, is still being used. Okay, if you are an effective fighter, you have to be already at a Saam Kiu stage, awareness stage. Right? In fighting, you're aware of what? Time and space. Okay? So time in fighting is anything has to do with distance, timing, positions. Okay? So Norm is in a better position to touch Steve. He's closer. That's position. I'm much further. Takes more time. Okay? So in the context of challenge, you want to create a superior position. So that means you have better control of time. Time is on your side. Okay? Now you can study that a lot because time can be affected by what? A lot of things. Speed. Or if you don't have a good position, you can still beat the guy by having quicker speed, but speed requires more energy. So there is more diminishing returns. Yeah, you can go fast, right? At my age right now, I cannot fight based on speed. But in the past, there are moments in my lifetime, I know I beat this guy because I was just faster than him, not because my technique's better. And I walk into a tournament with confidence because I know I'm faster. So I could do a technique regardless of a good position or bad position. I could back foot kick somebody where he tried to front foot kick me, I can still beat him. But today I cannot do that anymore. Right? So you have to rely on superior position. So it's a high attack. That understand? So time is position in fighting. Space is structure. Okay? How our human skeleton form and shape, that is the structure. Then you must understand the human mechanics based on the skeleton, which allow us to do what we need to do. Right? So in this content, we talk about fighting. Okay? So who would agree that fighting on two legs, standing up, is more human than fighting sitting down or laying down? Right? If you're a snake, yeah, you fight on the ground. Okay? So this is what we call mechanics. So if you study the human element, the mechanics, okay, when we optimize our body is when we square up, straight up, upright, and then on our feet. Do you agree?
Sure.
Right? So if you turn your body and you bend over or bend backwards or you're on one foot or you're not standing, that takes away the human skeleton's ability away, right? So therefore, the sitting tower form creates that condition, square up, straight up on our 2 feet. that is called the one line, center line. But today, the public center line, they just tell you, oh, it's this right here. The original center line is this concept of tilt, turn, and move. So if I tilt your body, move your body, and bend you over, turn you, okay, and move you, that means I affected your space. So when I have superior time and space, that means my position is better, my structure is better. The fight is over, guys. There's no fight. So we are, in essence, trying to stay true to the principle of maximizing time and space. Okay? So therefore, it's not a philosophy of fighting. It's harmonizing with the moment. And what is the most important place, most important time? Here and now. And here and now, in the physical term, is position and structure. When my position and structure is better than yours, that is reality of the moment. Where most of the time, it's an illusion that defeats us. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So this all ties into our overall philosophy of our Shaolin Kung Fu system. Okay? So, any questions?
Yeah. So would you say, let me back up here. Would you say,
Oh, I forgot to mention, when you detach, get to a point of enlightenment, that's called emptiness. That's where karate comes from. The name, emptiness.
so would you say, the patterns would be practicing reaction, and then detachment would be involuntary reaction?
Yeah, it's related in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to mold yourself into a certain pattern, but then the pattern, if you train correctly, would disappear, but then the reaction
The flow.
would be there. So when it come under the right condition, it comes out automatically.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So that's why sparring is very necessary part of the detachment. Okay, when we reach maximum efficiency, it goes back to what we call emptiness. So if you look at our Shaolin Hall's chart at the top, the bottom three is Shaolin Hall, the top three is Wei Chen Hall. But at the top is emptiness. That means you reach the moment of perfection, emptiness. This is just moment of truth. It's not about me and you. It's not about like just back to the original nature of things. So karate to Shaolin. Any questions? How general Shaolin Buddhism, how it connects to how our system is created. Okay, so if you say I practice Shaolin Kung Fu, but with just form and movements, that does not represent Shaolin. Shaolin has to be represented by the Four Noble Truths, which is not doesn't teach you, it's not a personal faith. It's an observation through reality of the condition of world, condition of life. Right? Is it not true? Are those conditions? It is true. But then it's based on our own perspective and our own training that, so our journeys are all different. So therefore we require different methods. There's just not one way. In the past, the original way is like one shoe fits all. You have to do it this way. So that's why the old school monks, yeah, no drinking, no sex, no marriage, no participation of the world event. They're highly isolated. They have to be completely detached. So it's a very difficult way. Okay, so they go about this way. But when Dharma created Chan Buddhism, it created many methods to get to that point. Okay. So that is the. So Damien, you understand how the Saam Mou Kiu is related back to the Four Noble Truths?
I am now, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. And again, going back to time, space, energy, from Q's wandering stage, we talk about the context of martial art. That means you're doing things without the reality of time, space, energy. Right? If I want to hit Norman, right? Like I'm already tensing up. What does that do to my energy? It's called wasting that energy. And then, without reference, I'm so attached to hitting Norman, I'm gonna start hitting him right now. So from the wrong time, right, with the wrong structure, with the wrong energy, if Norman would just stay relaxed, focused, at a state of meditation, when that illusion comes, and he's just gonna pop me in the face there. So it's called illusion versus reality. And he maintains center. Right? Now, if we would have reacted to that, my attachment caused his attachment. So we both suffer more in that sense. So, very Saam Mou Kiu is doing things with no regard to time, space, energy. I remember, 1988, I opened up in 1987. 88, I already brought a team to the national. We trained the kids. I didn't have any adult fighters, only kids. I trained the kids so hard, and he's talented. And then by the time we get started, right before the moment, the fight started, and then he was saying something to himself, right? And I said, "What's he saying?" He said, "Okay." I forgot what the exact combo is. Basically, he's had a combo set up. He's gonna go into a fight and do this 1, 2, 3 combos. I was, oh no, you don't want to do that. Okay, just kind of trust your training and look for openings. Okay, you don't go in there with this 1, 2, 3 set combos. You're gonna lose. Okay, so he went in there with a fixed pattern. That's called Saam Mou Kiu. Okay, Saam Kiu is you start timing it. You start understanding the mechanic of time, space, the mechanics, the precision, all of that, and more effective of use of your energy. That's Saam Kiu. Okay, Wing Kiu is where you have combine all the elements of human skeletons with the time, space, energy, and maximizing that. Perfect harmony of time, space, energy. Okay, so to be able to achieve at that state, that to the monk is the highest level of meditation. Okay, so you can keep up with the change so quick. In the fight, change happens so quick. In a split second, you don't keep up with the change and you get hit. So we call it karma. Right? If you get hit and you still don't change your way, that's called attachment. Then you get hit again. Right? Okay, so this is how things could be simply explained. Or if you get hit once, you better change. And eventually, through more experience, through more skill, you don't have to get hit to change. You change because change happens. Sometimes change happens, but we don't change, so then we need to learn harder lessons. That's real. Every time we come back from a world championship, there's always lesson learned. So then we better change or quickly adapt. We cannot go in with the same thing again. Okay, so that's called suffering. It's called attachment. We have to be detached. So, and through sparring, skill challenge, partner drill, you can experience those moments of perfections. Yeah, through chisao, through fighting, through any partner drills that we do that is not fixed, you can experience that. How many of you guys experience that? The moments of like clarity and it just comes out, perfect time moments. Okay, so. All right, any questions? Any part? So some of the keyword in our system is Saam Mou Kiu, Fang Kiu, San Kiu, Wen Kiu, wandering stage, awareness stage, focus stage. Okay, time space energy. That's what we mean. Fighting to us is harmony of time space energy. The control is our thinking, feeling, and action. Okay, internal triad, external triad. Okay, now we are trying to achieve Wen Kiu, right? But you have to understand, you cannot take somebody from Fang Kiu to Wen Kiu and like giving you a hat to put on and clothes to wear, and then suddenly here's Wen Kiu. You understand that? Mm-hmm. You have to understand how Fang Kiu, like today's Wen Chun is different from our high level Wen Chun. Our original Wen Chun is based on Wen Kiu because we still have the original formula. It's based on sets of principles of time space energy. When you lose that principle, then the guise goes into the person. The master becomes the ultimate guide, right? Which then created all this variation today. So if you do your version, you do your version. It's not wrong, it's just how it is. But if you go back to the original Wen Chun, it is geared towards the laws of time space energy and formulated, then that is the system. Okay? So you cannot teach the original system and have them do Wen Kiu things, expect them to be Wen Kiu. They have to go through the Fang Kiu, San Kiu, Wen Kiu. So in other words, if I teach Steve with no experience of Wen Chun, the Wen Kiu, Tao form, okay? And expect him to have Wen Kiu experience and understanding, who's at an illusion? You, me. Remember, what he needs is experience through physical experience and then the right wisdom, understanding. That comes through a journey. So therefore, like today, we show you guys what we call the public Wen Chun. Because you have to start somewhere, okay? At least that is San Kiu. We don't start you with Fang Kiu. Fang Kiu Wen Chun is wrong time, wrong space, wrong energy, right? There are Fang Kiu Wen Chun out there. So if I put my knees together like this, and my elbow on center, and there are Wen Chun that is doing that because the instructor doesn't know better. But public doesn't know better. They will say, oh, I like their style, so I want to learn that style, but it is wrong. We call it Fang Kiu. Can you tell me why it's Fang Kiu?
Not the correct time or space, sir.
Yeah, because if the knees are touching each other and the elbow on center, mechanically it's all wrong.
Yes.
Okay? So when the mechanics is wrong, how can you even fight?
Yes, sir.
Right? This is Fang Kiu. You cannot fight from those positions. So then right away we objectively look at, okay, what? Position, structure is all wrong. How can you say this is an effective martial art? You cannot. Okay? So we don't need to show you Fang Kiu stuff to tell you what's Fang Kiu. We just need to bring you out of Fang Kiu. So therefore you enter San Kiu. That is the Wen Chun we teach you. Okay, so Steve, you went through the first journey through the Wen Chun system, from your past experience to me. You finish it from Tao all the way to the knife. This is your first phase, Saam Mou Kiu. Now your next phase will be getting to the point you understand the original system, where eventually your wisdom experience will get you into Mou Kiu. So therefore, that is reason. Now, if I teach a beginners Mou Kiu stuff, that person will turn that Mou Kiu into Feng Kiu. So that is how, after 300 years of evolution of Wen Chun, you have so many Feng Kiu Wen Chun is because of that. So you cannot teach somebody Wen Kiu expect, oh, this is Shaolin Wen Chun style, so I gotta teach you this. Then you really lack the understanding of Saam Mou Kiu. I mean, Damien left. Have you ever teach high level stuff to your student in the beginning, and then it's like you think they understand, but then a year later they still don't get it.
I've not done it deliberately, but I have been teaching some of my mid-level students some things that some of my beginner students were watching, and then I saw them trying to imitate it.
Right.
And I'm like, don't do that. And a year later, they're still trying to get it.
Right. Okay. So it's not a way for the instructor to hold you guys back, but it is the correct reality. Okay. Same reason we don't teach kids all these technical details. They need gross motor skill, not fine motor skill. And mentally, they cannot comprehend. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. And this martial art is a very high level. It takes maturity. You know, I look at myself. A lot of people say, "Oh, I wish I would have got this 20 years ago." Not necessarily because of Saam Mou Kiu. If I would have got this reality, this truth, this deep stuff when I'm in my 20s, I would have probably dismissed it. Because my journey and my season as a 20-year-old were focused on how fast I can kick, how high I can kick, how athletic I am, not on how efficient my body can be. Yeah, it's different. Okay. Yeah, then as we get older, the more we realize the limitation of our body, the more value this art gives. There's no way that effective 60-year-old plus guy can still effectively do hand-to-hand combat with our high-level system. Okay, unless you pick up a weapon. Yeah. That's why, they say people are good with weapons are older people, or you're going to have a highly effective martial art like Shaolin Wen Chun. All right, so we're going to go out there, and I want to start with the single hand chi sao. Okay, chi sao is the main elements, main skill set, but you notice most of the Wen Chun community, they kind of evolve into two hand. They stay there for a long time. Okay, there are two reasons that we kind of focus more on single hand chi sao, because if we are looking at the fighting situation right here, there's a bridge and boom. Now, in that split second, if you take a picture, freeze, look like we're in a position of two-handed chi sao position. So with the muscle memory there, you can come out, maybe exchange. But then you notice that stickiness is gone already. You're gonna have to create a new bridge. So for two hands to stick, so for 2 + 2, 4 hands to stick, that is very small percentage of the actual fight. Most of the time, you have more chance of one hand stick to implement their actual skill set fighting. So the stick itself is very small margin of the fight. Now, if you want to stick to him, then eventually you have to grab, then go into the chi kyu, the grappling part. Then you can prolong the stick. But to actually roll and stick, that is like a very short transition time frame. So that's why in our Dan Chi Sao we cover all possible elements, from cross hand outside, cross hand inside, parallel hand inside, outside, all the possibility. That will give you more of actual applications when you go into the free flow, free fightings. Now, Chi Sao, like I said, right, the double hand Chi Sao could happen in just split seconds there, but you're not going to see what? You might have one transition, one roll, or maybe we'll call half a roll, but you definitely would not have a full roll, not to mention more than one roll. Okay? And so you have to understand that. Chi Sao is the connection to go into other skill sets. But if you say Chi Sao itself for fighting, then single hand Chi Sao is a key element. Okay? So I want to revisit that real quick. We had a good test yesterday. Give Tamiko a big hand. For black belt yesterday, black sash, and she did all the Wing Chun move. Part of the elements is free exchange. Okay, and we're going to go over that a little bit today. Questions? Okay, so be educated, very important. Okay. And also, when we teach you guys the martial art here, it's not just, oh, now I'm educated in Wing Chun and Shaolin, but then I don't know anything else. That's not true. Because our theory and principle are universal. Okay? You look at pattern, right? First hall, second hall, third hall. Those are universal sequence of training. Well, you go to a boxing gym, what they do first? Conditioning. That's first hall. They don't have pomse forms, but they have shadow boxing. They do have mechanics. They do move their footwork a certain way. They do move their body. They do shadow box. That's their second hall. Then they quickly move to the third hall. Spend most of the time there. Okay? So therefore, they tend to develop quick application skill in the beginning stage. Or a traditional martial artist, you have to master first hall first, then master second hall first, then you go to the third hall in a traditional way. So master first hall, in martial art, traditional martial art, when you do a full split, putting your feet right in the air, all that stuff, are considered first hall. You gotta have all that ability before you even learn the basic form. Then you gotta master the form, then you go to the third hall. So it takes years before you learn applications. So you put those two together, 3 years in boxing, 3 years in traditional Shaolin, put them together, who's gonna win? Probably the boxing guy. But if you go a little bit longer, now the Shaolin traditional guy enters the third hall, then he gets to test out his kicks, his strike, his grab, his come down, all of that. That will obviously overwhelm the boxer. Does that make sense? Okay. So being able to relate is part of the original Buddhism. If you study karate, you gotta relate back to Kung Fu. But if you're at the deep Kung Fu level, you can go to the martial art world and be able to understand what everyone else is at and what they're doing and why and how. Okay? This is our, if you're higher level, you're educated. So that means if you're already at a black sash level or master level in Shaolin Wing Chun, you understand all martial arts. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's called education. Well, I always say, like, right, if you go education, is you go deeper and deeper, or we go higher and higher. It's not more, right? Norm has a PhD, and I have 5 high school degrees. What's more impressive? I have 5. He's only got 1. No, I don't have 5 high school degrees. Okay, so same. But you don't want to go out there and brag and say, okay, I got 6 black belts. Wait a minute, you got black belt and you still need to get 5 more? That means you didn't really got educated in your first black belt. Why you need to get 5 black belt? Okay, because you can cross-train to gain experience. We cross-train to gain experience, not because we lack something. Or eventually, you guys are good. We always send you out. Go train with this guy, go train with this school, go train with this camp, go to the Shaolin Temple, go with this teacher. We want you to do that because that's part of your real experience too. Okay. All right, let's take a 5-minute break. We'll meet you guys out there.